Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Today we have picked up a couple of important articles from the Hindu which are very significant from your examination point of view. First, we will take a look at the MCQs. What is that you have to do? Look at the question, answer them on the comment section, then look into the explanation part. So first let's start with the MCQs followed by the article and then take up some of the mains related articles. First article, the first article that we are looking into and the MCQ is with respect to Kangri. Kangri is a traditional portable fire pot which is used in the state of Assam, Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh, Kashmir. The answer to this is Kashmir. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to Kangris. So remember, Kangris is used in the state of Kashmir and this happens to be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. What are these Kangris? As you can see from the image, what you will have is a kind of a basket. Inside this basket, what you will have is a clay like a pot. So it is made from the clay and the twigs of the willow tree. So you will have is a pot. This pot will be made out of clay, and within the clay what they will make use of is the carbon. So basically they will have all the kind of charcoal that is added into the clay, and this will constantly provide heat as well. So they will carry within their jacket so that it can give them the warmth. Why do they use it? That is because when you consider the region of Jammu and Kashmir, what exactly happens? The temperature may fall as much as minus 20 degrees centigrade. So it is very cold. In order to provide them the warmth, what they make use of is called as a Kangri. So within their jackets, they make use of these clay pots, and these clay pots will also have charcoal as well. This will constantly provide them the warmth. So Kangri is made from clay and twigs of the willow tree, and excessive use of Kangri in number of situations can also cause a type of squamous cell carcinoma. This can also result in issues related to health as well. So remember, this is filled with the charcoal embers and it is carried by the people in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, as this will provide warmth to such individual. This can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. And this charcoal embers, how much can it hold? So the clay would be able to hold as much as 250 grams in this pot. And now the fire lasts for more hours and thus provides warmth to these individuals. There are different types of Kangris. One happens to be Sada Kangri. It is used by everyone to keep warm throughout the winter. Then what we have is Zalandhar Kangri, Dubdar Kangri, Durdar Kangri. These are the elegantly crafted Kangris that are given to the newlywed brides by their parents and in-laws on special occasions such as Shivratri. Then what we have is Shikari Kangri. This is a special type of Kangri because it has big size and is used by boatmen. These are the different types of Kangris that we have. So this is the first article and the first MCQ. Now let's look into the next article and the MCQ. With respect to Onattukara sesame, which of the following statements are correct? It is grown in the state of Kerala and has received GI tag. It is high in vitamin E and antioxidants, and it also contains oleic acid, linoleic acid, palmitoleic acid, etc., which help to maintain good health. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is both. So what are we speaking about? We are speaking about Onattukara sesame, and this happens to be one of the crops, and it has received the GI tag right now, and which is why we have taken this practice question. When we look into this article, we have picked up because efforts are being made to expand the cultivation of geographical indication tag Onattukara sesame in Alappuzha district of Kerala. When we speak about this sesame, it has very unique characteristics of its own. What are these unique characteristics? It is high in vitamin E. There are antioxidants in this, oleic acid, linolenic acid and palmitoleic acid, and it is farmed on 500 acres spread across Alappuzha, Pathanamthitta and Kollam district. So remember, this has got the GI tag from the state of Kerala, and it is majorly grown in these three districts of Alappuzha, Pathanamthitta as well as Kollam district. The seed is priced at about 200 to 250 kg. Authorities are now providing incentives for growing these sesame on fields so that more people are able to grow it and they reap the benefit of it. This happens to be another important pointer from the preliminary examination point of view. So you will also have couple of questions as well. Let's say for example, we have questions like match the following. We will have, let's say, one of the sweets, let's say Mysore Pak. Mysore Pak has been given the GI tag. It will be matched with, let's say, the state of Tamil Nadu. Or you will have another, let's say for example, Nagpur oranges. So Nagpur oranges has also been given the GI tag. It is from which state? Let's say for example, it might be given as Gujarat. So what you will have is match the following, where you would have one of the plants, or you would have the sweets, or let's say for example Darjeeling tea, so on and so forth. So what you will have is one of the GI tagged one, which will be on one side and the state it represents on the other side. So there will be match the following questions as well. So you should be having an awareness that from which state is this particular product given the GI tag, because UPSC in the past has asked questions like that, because even the Tirupati Ladu, which has also got the GI tag, has been asked. So such questions will be asked, so remember them. Now let's look into the next practice. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the game of consent. What is this article all about? The article is primarily taken into picture because of this reference point, that is November 19 is observed as the World Day for the Prevention of Child Abuse. So remember, we have the World Day of Prevention of Child Abuse, which is observed every year on November 19. This can also be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. So the World Day for the Prevention of Child Abuse is observed every year on November 19. Why is this day observed? That is because of the increase in the child abuse. When we speak about child abuse, it can be resulting in different forms of child abuse. What are these different forms? One, it can be the physical child abuse, it can be emotional child abuse, it can be sexual abuse, and at the same time it can also involve psychological abuse, where a person might have gone through an incident and that has created a permanent mark on the mind of the child. So the physical abuse includes, let's say, the child labor. A person is not supposed to work at a particular period of time at a specific period of age. So despite the laws and rules and regulations laying the foundation that a child should not be employed in any of the work, the child is made to work. This is the physical abuse. Then what you have is the emotional abuse. For example, this can also be treated as a psychological abuse. A person is made to go through such circumstances that emotionally a child will not be able to equip himself. Then what we have is the sexual abuse. Sexual abuse, as we all know, they are employed in the pornographic industry. There are sexual abuses that are conducted against them. All this may lead to a trauma and stress to these children, and ultimately they are put to the psychological stress over a period of time. So what we have is the physical stress, emotional stress, psychological and sexual stress which a child goes through. In order to prevent all this, what we observe is the World Day for the Prevention of the Child Abuse, which is observed every year on November 19th. So basically the objective is to ensure that these issues are taken into concern and the society addresses the child abuse. One, on the government front, second on the private front, and third happens to be on the civil society front. So if all these organizations and the government come together, we would be able to reduce the child abuse. So in order to give them the feedback, make them understand what is child abuse, teach them the lessons of child abuse so that they also know what is good touch and bad touch, and also give them physical and emotional support. This day is celebrated world over. As part of this initiative, we have one of the games that is developed, which is called as the Consify. What is this Consify? As you can see from the image, it is a game which is played by as many as 3 to 6 players. So what do? This is something like whenever you are playing this particular game, what you will have is a word. What is this? The word includes the consent form, or there'll be a case studies, or there'll be a theme based studies. They would also define what a particular word is. They would give you the strategies and the strengths of it as well. They will also give you ideas as well. So as and when there are people like 3 to 6 people who are playing this particular game, they will also start researching about these words. For example, there'll be something about bodily autonomy, there'll be something about body consent as well. What is good touch, what is bad touch, where a person can touch, where a person cannot touch. All these iterations and the knowledge is given through this particular game. So as and when they play, they would be able to understand what is right, what is wrong. Even if they don't know about a specific topic or a particular topic, they would be able to discuss amongst each other and ultimately enlighten each other as well. So through this particular game, they would be able to understand what is good, what is correct, what is right, and they would also be able to differentiate what is wrong, what is bad, and what is not good for them, and ultimately develop these understandings about the sexual behavior as well as the physical and the emotional behavior of the people. So this happens to be a game which is developed so that people can learn about the physical, emotional, sexual attributes that they have to know. So this is all about bodily feeling. So basically the primary aim of Consentify is to ensure that consent education is given to the children so that we are able to empower the children with a sense of agency on their own body as well as the bodily autonomy. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So in case there is a question that asks you what are the measures taken by the government or by the civil society or by the general public in order to give a viewpoint about the prevention of the child sexual abuse. So what you can say is come up with a concept called as Consify. So this happens to be a private concept initiated by few people where game is turned into a strategy so the children know about it. All of us love games, all of us love the fun games as well. As and when you play a particular game, you also learn the concept which is called as the Consify. That is why it becomes important from your GS paper 1 social issues perspective and also from your GS paper 2 polity. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is important from your GS paper 2, which is Indian Polity and Governance. What is the article speaking about? The article here is speaking about the Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill of 2023. This is important from a GS paper through, which is that polity as well as governance. We have one of the laws that is currently in India, which is called as the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act of 1995. As the very name denotes, what does it speak about? It basically speaks about the cable television network. All of us have TVs at our home. Let's imagine we do not have let's imagine for a moment we do not have the OTT services and all that. Previously, if you go back to 10 to 15 years back, what we had was the cable operators. You had these huge antennas that were connected on the top. What you had were services provided by your local TV operators. What you had were limited channels, not as many channels as we have today. So what you had was cable TVs where the connections were given by the cable TV operators, and ultimately you would view a particular channel on your TV. So there were a number of channels that were telecasted. So how do I know which are the channels that are present? How do I know what are the channels programs that are present? How do I control and regulate these channels and their outcome in a particular TV? And at the same time, when these channels also have number of programs for them, how do I regulate them? And between the programs, what you will also have is the advertisements. How do I regulate these advertisements? Everything was covered under the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act of 1995. So basically, the Cable Television Networks of 1995 had rules and regulations and laws which ultimately covered the overall regulations with respect to the operations of the cable television networks. What are the programs that could be run? What type of programs could be run? When it should be run? For example, if there are adult programs that are present, it should be usually telecasted after 10 p.m, 9 p.m, so on and so forth, primarily because at that moment what you will have is the children who will be sleeping. So there are certain rules, there are certain codes, and if there is an advertisement, it should not be having any sexual content, obscene content, and this will also have to be regulated when it is being telecasted on number of channels. So all these plans were regulated by the Cable Television Networks of 1995 1999. So the cable television networks ultimately control the program code and the advertisement code of the broadcasters and the distribution platform operators, and it also controlled linear broadcasting including the cable networks. But when we see the year 2023, we have seen a lot of transformation and a change has occurred as well. What are the changes? One, what we have is the DTH, what we have is the IPTVs, what we have is the OTT services as well. For example, we have Netflix that comes on our TVs, then we also have Amazon Prime, we connect it to the internet, and ultimately there are a number of programs that we also play on our TVs as well. So apart from the existing cables, what we have is new kinds of programs and new kinds of technologies which were earlier not covered. For example, we didn't have this entire provision of OTT at all, we didn't have this provision of Netflix at all, we didn't have the provision of, let's say for example, Amazon Prime Video as such. So these are also to be regulated because there can be obscene content which can be presented on these OTT channels, so on and so forth. So in order to control and ensure, we have many laws in place. What we have is a new law which is called as the Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill of 2023. This will basically replace the Cable Television Networks Act of 1995. What is the features of this particular act? When we speak about this bill, it currently comprises of 6 chapters, 48 sections as well as 3 schedules. What are the key highlights or the major provisions of this legislation? Consolidation and modernization. What do I mean by it? As of now, we have number of laws that look into the cable channels. We also have number of laws with respect to the IT Act as well. We have number of rules and regulations which are also created by the executive. So what we have is different kinds of laws. In order to bring all these laws under one single umbrella and one single ambit, what we have is this bill that is created. So as of now, we have different departments, regulatory mechanisms, rules, regulations under different laws and department. But what am I doing right now? I'm bringing all these laws under one single legislation. So it addresses a long-standing need of consolidating and updating the regulatory provisions for various broadcasting services under a single legislative framework. This move streamlines the regulatory process, making it more efficient and contemporary. It extends its regulatory purview to encompass broadcasting over-the-top content, digital news, current affairs, regulated through the IT Act and regulations made thereof. So what will it control? It will control the over-the-top content, which is your Netflix and Prime Video. It will also control the digital news as well and current affairs, which are earlier not covered under the previous legislation. So all these are taken into picture under one single law. Then what we have is contemporary definitions and future ready provisions. To keep pace with the evolving technology and services, the bill introduces comprehensive definitions for contemporary broadcasting terms and incorporates provisions for emerging broadcasting technologies. Let's say for example, we have number of terms and technologies with respect to the satellite, or with respect to the uplink, or with respect to the downlink, or with respect to the regulations. The earlier law did not have all these provisions. Why? Because we did not have the advancement of the technology. So the new law will have new definitions in place, and these new definitions clearly emphasize on the fact that we have new types of technology. So the technology that we currently have will be mushroomed, it will be encouraged. So these definitions will be incorporated under the definition clause of the new legislation. This strengthens the self-regulation regime. What do I mean by self-regulation regime? There is something called as the government imposing a certain law on the media front. Then you also have the media front coming up with its own set of rules and regulations. So we have the government. What does the government do? The government would be able to legislate a particular law. So they would be able to come up with the laws and rules and regulations. So they would make a statutory law. The skeletal structure would be given in the law, but the rules can also be created by the executive as well. This is where the administrative law comes into the picture. So the skeletal structure will be created by the legislature, the executive will add muscle to it. So this executive structure or the rules that is created should not be in conflict with the original law. So what we have is the government creating the law for the media and other channels as well. This is one type. The other type is we have the media channels. Let's say for example, we have a media channel A, then we also have media channel B or a media channel C, so on and so forth. There are a couple of media channels. So what do? They all come together. There is no extra force or coercion by the government, but instead these media channels come together, they discuss, they deliberate on couple of issues that they have. They ultimately create their own self-regulation code. So there is no emphasis by the government, there is no coercion by the government, there is no force by the government, but the government says that you all decide on your own how do you want to regulate yourself. So the media channels, they come and take a conference, they all come together, decide what could be the future course of action and the code of conduct. So for this particular advertisement, there should be no explicit content that should be present, obscene content should not be present, the language should be very good as well, there cannot be any abusive or unparliamentary words. So these are the kind of wordings that these committees come together and they decide on it. So ultimately self-regulation is where these media companies come together, they discuss on their own, they ultimately come to a consensus, they just give out what is this broader consensus that they develop to the government. But in the first place, what you had is the government coming up with the rule and a regulation, imposing it on these media channels. But when it comes to self-regulation, there will be these people who will build a consensus, decide on a certain point and ultimately convey the same to the government. So what we have under this new law is not the government imposition or the coercion or a force, but these media channels who are able to create something on a consensus basis. So this strengthens the self-regulation regime, it enhances self-regulation with the introduction of content evaluation committees and evolves the existing interdepartmental committee into a more participative and broader broadcasting advisory council. Then what we have is the differentiated program code and advertisement code. As we initially discussed, the advertisement code should also be enunciated and also be elaborated by the government. What kind of advertisement can come on a specific program, what type of advertisements can be shown to the TV people who are watching the TV, because there can be obscene advertisement as well, which will not send the right message to the society. And as a result, it allows for a differentiated approach to program and advertisement codes across various services and require self-classification by broadcasters and robot access control measures for the restricted content. Then we have accessibility for persons with disabilities. The bill addresses the specific needs of persons with disabilities by providing enabling provisions for issue of comprehensive accessibility guidelines. For example, we have people with disability, people who would not be able to hear, people who would not be able to see as well. So for these kind of people, what are the different guidelines that I'll be providing is also part of it. For example, there will be also called as the sign language that will be conveyed. Instead of speaking, a person will also have sign language that is spoken. This sign language can also be present in the news programs. If you had seen DD programs earlier, apart from the voice that the anchor used to give out, what you would also have is a person who would provide it in the sign language. So this will be reinterpreted and these provisions will continue to exist. Statutory penalties and fines. The draft bill introduces statutory penalties such as advisory, warning, censure, monetary penalties for operators and broadcasters. Provision for imprisonment and fine remains, but only for very serious offences, which will basically ensure there is a balance between regulation as well as the rights of the channels. Equitable penalties. Monetary penalties and fines are linked to financial capacity of the entity, taking into account their investment and turnover. And then what we will have is the infrastructure sharing, platform services, right of the way. All this are some of the important parts of this legislation. Because we have this legislation in picture, it has its own share of advantages. One, it will ensure that the cost of doing business in India is equitable, and this will basically ensure that doing business in India, ease of doing business will improve over a period of time. And at the same time, when we speak about ease of portals, we have, since the self-regulation that has come into the picture, you will have is the own portal that will be developed by the media channels. They will regulate their own content, so there is no coercion force that is introduced by the government. So if you look into the features become the advantages in itself. However, there are a couple of concerns as well. What are these concerns? One, the government may also control certain programs. How? There are bodies and designated authorities who are appointed. These authorities are given so much of discretion that they would be able to regulate a certain content. So these authorities, they have so much power under the legislation that they would be able to say a program in a particular channel is not good. So if they're asking the channel and the media outlet to not come out with this program or this advertisement, these will have to compulsorily accept it. In case they do not accept, they can also ask that media channel to refrain from telecasting such a program. So such measures have also been taken as well, and at the same time it also raises authorized officers to come up with new code as well. Apart from the law and the self-regulation regime, these people have been given a lot of discretion so that they can prevent obscene material from surfacing. But this is good, but at the same time it is bad as well. Why? Because too much of discretion is also bad, because these officers can also become corrupt as well. They can keep emphasizing the fact that if you don't pay a certain amount, we have the discretion to bar this particular program, so on and so forth. And added to it, there can be opaque practices which were earlier present. These should have been addressed in the present law. These are yet not addressed in the present legislation. So what is the way forward? The way forward would be, since there are some loopholes and lacunas that are presently current, what we have to look is at the foreign channels. Let's say, for example, there is a foreign channel, and this foreign channel basically looks at certain issues, and these issues have to be addressed. So look at the foreign channels, look at their laws, and bring these international templates into India. So the foreign rules and regulations which can be promising from some other country, an analysis will have to be done, and such templates will have to be introduced as well. And at the same time, whenever there is a program and a law that is present, it may change with changing times because it is organic. And at the same time, when there is a flaw or a lacuna that you encounter, as and when you encounter a lacuna, there has to be an executive power that has to be accorded so that they are able to bring the change uniformly. So establishing a mechanism to review the content every now and then and rephrase or bring a change in that part of the legislation should also be supported as a way forward. So adopt something which is good from a foreign country, or at the same time review a specific content. If it is not meeting the intended standards, then bring about a change in the executive rules as well, so that we are able to balance the rights of the channels and the balance of the society and the individual as well. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the role of the governor in the legislature. We have discussed about this article in the last couple of days. So what this article speaks about is the extraordinary powers that have been given to the governor. At the level of the central government, what we have is the president. So similar such powers are also given to the governor. But when you consider and juxtapose the discretionary powers of the president and the governor has a slightly upper edge when it comes to the discretionary powers. We have the constitutional discretion. We also have situational discretions that are given to the governor. One such constitutional discretion that the governor also has is with respect to the powers of the bill. What happens when we have the legislature who come up with a bill? This will ultimately become an act only when the consent and then assent is given by the governor. What if the governor does not give assent to this particular legislation? It does not become an act, and ultimately it means that all the measures that the legislature want to take, they would not be able to take that measure because it is not being given permission by the governor. So similar such issues have happened in multiple states in India. For example, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, it has happened in Rajasthan as well, where a bill has been sent to the governor and the governor has not given the permission, or it means he has withheld his assent, and as a result that particular legislation ends in the governor's office. So this basically means that when a bill is given to the governor has to give assent to it. Where do we derive this power from? That is from Article 163 of the Indian Constitution. When we speak about Article 163 of the Indian Constitution, it says that the Chief Minister, along the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister, will have to give aid and advice to the governor. So when the advice is given to the governor, they have to listen to it, because these are the elected powers. So the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers are elected by the people. Since they are elected by the people, they have every right to decide what the bill has to be, what should be the welfare mechanism, so on and so forth. Ultimately, they are responsible to the people of the state. The people of the state have elected them. So when a bill is passed from the legislature to the governor, he compulsorily has to give the assent. What if the governor sends back the bill? So if the governor sends back the bill, then for the second time, if the legislature is sending it back to the governor, it is compulsory for him to give the assent to that particular legislation. In some cases, he does not give the assent, he does not give the return the bill, and he holds the bill. That is where the major problem arises. So in the recent Supreme Court, the Supreme Court has also observed that this should not be the way forward, as it breaches the constitutional principles. In fact, the Supreme Court has also categorized that this is against the constitutional morality, and as a result, the governors will have to give the right, that is, sign the bill as soon as possible, said the Supreme Court of India. We have discussed all of this in the past as well, but we have two important recommendations that we have to look into. One happens to be from the Sarkaria Commission, the other happens to be from the Punchi Commission. What did the Sarkaria Commission say? The Sarkaria Commission said that it is only the reservation of the bills for the consideration of the President, that too under the rare cases of unconstitutionality, that can be implied as a discretionary power of the governor. So only when there is a constitutional biasness or a breach of the constitutional values, only then when the governor is referring to the President, that is when the discretionary occurs. In most of the cases, the governor should not even refer the bill to the President. Only when, let's say for example, the powers of the High Court is being snatched away by the state government, refer the bill to the President. Only in those parameters, refer the bill to the President. In rest of the cases, you don't even have to refer these bills to the President. It further recommended the President should dispose of such bills within a maximum period of 6 months. Now, what if the governor has given this legislation to the President? So the President will have to give assent to this legislation within 6 months. You should not be holding on to that legislation for a longer period of time. In the event of President withholding assent, the reason should be communicated to the state government. Why are you not signing this legislation? What is the problem with the legislation? So give out a perspective and ultimately convey the same thing to the state government so that they can bring those changes, says the Sarkaria Commission. The Punchi Commission also recommended that the governor should take a decision with respect to a bill presented for the assent within 6 months. However, these recommendations are yet not implemented. That happens to be the major problem when it comes to the governor's powers in the country, which is why we recently also have the Supreme Court of India, which said that the aid and advice have to be heard of the Council of Ministers. In fact, this was also clarified by the Supreme Court in the Shamsher Singh case in the 1974, where the Supreme Court said the governor does not exercise the discretionary powers while withholding assent or returning a bill to the state legislation. They are required to act as per the advice of the Council of Ministers. So the aim of this legislation is that the governors listen to the legislature. They do not have per se the discretionary powers as envisaged under 163. Yes, they do have the discretionary powers, but they should also listen to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, is what is this article all about. Basically, we have discussed about this article in the past 1 to 2 weeks, so let's not have an elaborate discussion right now because all these points are already covered by the earlier lectures. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.